What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, Nintendo Direct fever is at an all-time high online right now, and you can pretty much prove that by looking at what set off the latest speculation for Direct happening this week. And no, it's not necessarily me going on vacation, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about that Stop Killing Games initiative as it continues to roll along. In fact, it's gathered so much attention, we now have a response from an organization in the EU that is representing a large number of publishers, and you can kind of guess what their take is on this whole thing. And we also have Capcom talking about Mega Man. In fact, they were asked by an investor, and we'll take a look at what they had to say about that. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4, as that game is coming out this week, but it is already out now in early access. And alongside of that, reviews have also gone live, which we can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at an 83. It was bouncing between 82 and 83. There's not a ton of reviews right now. I think there's 10 as an example on the PS5. When 1 and 2 came out, the PS4, I believe, was like the leading platform in terms of reviews, but still sitting at an 83 here on PlayStation. We can see Screen Rant, as an example, gave it a 90, saying what's here is great, but I'd love to see more of it, whether that's in the form of DLC, that long-rumored Thug remaster, or even a brand new game. Only time will tell. For almost 30 years now, THPS games have given me some of the best memories I've had in gaming, and that certainly continues with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4. In fact, all the reviews that have posted so far are positive, with the lowest one being an 8 out of 10, and that also includes IGN there in the mix. So I mean, this is what I was expecting out of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4. More of what we had with 1 and 2, but clearly bringing in 3 and 4. Although I will say the change from what made 4 different, with more of its open-ended structure being kind of eliminated and folded more into 3 structure, certainly was a bit of a letdown when they were kind of telling us about that. But still, it's Tony Hawk. I'm excited for a new one, and I'm hoping we eventually get to Tony Hawk Underground, and then who knows, maybe they take another shot at a new mainline one. Also, Square Enix continues to string along Final Fantasy fans, with the latest being this Final Fantasy IX video that they put out, which they were going to, because yesterday the Final Fantasy IX turned 25 in Japan. We have to wait till later on this holiday for it to turn 25 in the US for its official release. Came out months after it did in Japan in the US, but still, I mean, the video looks awesome, and there have been rumors flying everywhere around the idea of a Final Fantasy IX remake, not on the level of Final Fantasy VII remake, which some people out there I'm sure will be relieved to hear that, but more true to form in terms of the content that they bring up, and I guess just remake for current platforms. But there's also some discussion around there maybe being some issues in development with that, as Nate did say he was going to go back and check in on some sources and see exactly where they are with it. However, I guess they have up until later on this year, if they want it to coincide with the 25th anniversary, to at least make that announcement and have a big blowout event for it. It'd be very, very exciting. At least that's what I'm hoping right now for all the Final Fantasy IX diehards out there, because it does feel like Square Enix is building up to something. Here's hoping it's a game and not some sort of, I guess, piece of merchandise or something. Oh, and we did get some gameplay for Mafia: The Old Country, which is actually coming up here pretty soon in August. But I mean, you can see some of it here. This was over on IGN, as they had the first exclusive look at the gameplay for it, and it looked fine. I mean, I will say this, when they told us the price point of it and kind of their scope for it being more reined in, it's a $50 game, I don't think I was expecting them to reinvent the wheel or anything like that. I'm just kind of expecting to go in and have a fun ride, an interesting story that they have set up here, and yeah, third-person action stealth elements as they're showcasing, which again, not really trying to break the mold, just kind of going with the flow here. So it didn't look like anything that was going to blow people away, but looked like something that was going to be good enough, and then hopefully the story itself and the setting is able to really take it to the next level. But hey, we'll find out here soon. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and the potential for a Direct this weekend. I was a little surprised to see this catch on as much as it did, because I kind of looked at what exactly kicked this whole thing off, and it just tells me that people are ready for a Direct to happen. They're ready to get some release dates. They're ready for third-party announcements, and yes, some new first-party stuff as well. Even if it's things that are teased way off in the distance, just something to really get this generation off and running, all right? So when I saw this was the reason why the speculation really started to ramp up, you can see from Nash Weedle, who just says, so this week. I mean, that's it. It could have been, if it said, so this week, a Nintendo Direct, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, there's, this is so this week. Now, from there, people were replying, sharing this all over the place. It went up on the typical forums who like to sort of try to solve the mystery of when the next Nintendo Direct will be. But that was kind of it. Nate had mentioned he didn't hear anything about a Nintendo Direct for this week. And I will say, typically when something like this happens, everybody starts sharing these things around. You might see someone else pop up who's like, yeah, Nintendo Direct is coming up this week. I haven't seen that at the time of this recording. Now, of course, it's very fluid. Any of this stuff can pop up at any time online. But I guess today would be the day that the announcement for a Direct would happen. And Nintendo likes to do it right after Newswave. And certainly when I'm on the way to the beach, I'm sure they'd love to make that announcement. But it doesn't really feel like a Nintendo Direct is necessarily out there for this week. I just it seems like there would be a lot more, I don't know, just hearsay and discussion around it than it is currently. So the thing with that, though, that is kind of interesting for Nintendo's timing, if it's not this week, next week they have Donkey Kong Bonanza, and you feel like their marketing and all eyes, their spotlight, they'd want it to be on that game. As while we had Mario Kart World, and I know it's a fun, exciting game, sure, big for Mario Kart fans, and I've had fun with it since it came out. Donkey Kong Bonanza, I think, is a game that I will enjoy just more, all right? It looks like a game that will actually feel like a big new Switch 2 title just on some of the stuff it's doing, whereas, sure, Mario Kart World started out as a Switch 1 game and then moved to the Switch 2, but all the destruction elements and it being from some of the Odyssey team, it does have at least all the components for it to be a high-quality, exciting game. But if it's not next week, it wouldn't be the following week because there is a Pokemon Presents on the 22nd, so I guess that would leave the final week of July, and that also kind of feels like it's cutting it close. I know they have Drag X Drive for next month, and I know people, oh boy, but I'm trying to think of how they would start laying out the rest of this year, because they do have Pokemon Legends ZA, that at least is dated alongside of Drag X Drive, but we still need to hear about, clearly, Metroid Prime 4, it's a big one, Kirby Air Riders. We also have the Age of Imprisonment game, and I'm sure many others that are preparing to see its announcements, but this would make sense for Nintendo to start setting up the year sooner rather than later. So this week, in a vacuum, looking around, makes perfect sense to have a Direct, but there's not a lot of noise, a lot of smoke, you could say, that's out there right now for that to happen. There's also the idea of a lot of third parties who have been holding back their own announcements, release dates, or even just full-on third-party announcements. As an example, hey, this Final Fantasy IX Remake could be part of a Direct, and that's just what they've been hanging back for. We know Borderlands, the newest one, we're waiting on a release date for that. And I will tell you, there are third parties right now who are just kind of hanging out, waiting in the wings for at least an event, I guess, to announce their stuff. Now, it could be in a partner Direct, and that can happen to me at any point in time. But I also think Nintendo, unless they're going to start just pushing release dates, which keep an eye out for that through their Nintendo Today application, they could push the Metroid Prime 4 release date at any time through that. And there you go. It's do we need that Direct now then if, say, Metroid Prime 4 is an August game or a September game? If they wait till November for Metroid Prime 4, that's going to be crazy. That game was announced in 2017, a couple of months after the Switch 1 came out, and we're still waiting for it. I mean, I think it's going to be really, really good because it's retro and they never really missed with Metroid Prime at all. So I'm excited for it, but it's man, we're still waiting. So yes, right now, Nintendo Direct speculation is super high. It's at a fever pitch, as you can tell by just, I guess, just this post on X from Nash Weedle, who's been iffy in the past as it is. And let's just say this is even about a Direct. It could be about anything else, and they could even realize, hey, if I just post this cryptically, hey, you know what? I'll get a bunch of eyeballs on it from there, because from what I've seen so far, they have not followed up. But let me know when you think Nintendo is going to have their Direct. If it's not this week, how much longer they're going to wait. Next up, let's talk about Stop Killing Games, the initiative where they're asking publishers to, stop killing games. Games that clearly could have an offline mode, that are just always online, even different MMOs or other things where maybe you could have private servers, just a way to make it so that you can preserve games rather than a publisher just decide to take it away completely and just zap it out of existence. Well, the entire petition for it, really trying to at least get it in front of lawmakers, continues to rack up signatures. At this time, more than 1.2 million. They're aiming for about 1.4 million to make up for any margin of error for maybe signatures that don't meet a certain standard or are validated. So continue to push along if you're someone who really wants this to at least be set up where it could be put in front of lawmakers and discussed. But naturally, there's going to be some opposition here, and you'll never guess who it is. Let's take a look. This is posted up. This is over on Video Games Europe. It's a statement on Stop Killing. By the way, this is a big deal that they feel like they have to make a statement, and like this just recently happened. They say, we appreciate the passion of our community. However, the decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. We understand that it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in compliance with local consumer protection laws. Private servers are not always a viable alternative options for players, as the protections we put in place for secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making these video games prohibitively expensive to create. Welcome the opportunity to discuss our position with policymakers and those who have led the European Citizens Initiative in the coming months. When you take a guess at who's on the board for Video Games Europe, let's go over here to their page, take a look, and name any large publisher that you're at least somewhat familiar with. They're probably on this list. So clearly the three platform holders, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony, are all represented here. Take-Two, Ubisoft, Square Enix, you have Bandai Namco, Electronic Arts, Epic. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, Roblox is here. So in this case, the idea around Stop Killing Games is a simple one to us because we're not developing these games. We're not starting up with an entire plan of how it would work out with a transition to it being end of life. But that's also not really our problem because we're there to buy the games and continue to play them because you buy a game, you feel like a disc, especially if it's a disc. I mean, here's the thing. We're going towards a digital era as much as there's a lot of resistance to it, and that's fine. But it seems very clearly the numbers are skewing more and more in favor of that. Once, especially you get rid of like discs and stuff, you are wholly reliant on the publisher to keep these games going. I mean, who knows? We get to a point where most single player games need to have a call to a server to function at all. Like if we get to that point, you would definitely need something like this to ensure that they would have to go through and make sure the game can function without that server call. But here's the thing with this. You have naturally a bunch of publishers who are saying, yeah, we don't want to be inconvenienced further, or as they mention here, live services become too expensive to make. And I gotta tell you, I was already sold on this. It's like, are you telling me we could have less live service games flooding the market and competing for dollars that typically gets pulled away from a lot of even the single player experiences, as Sony themselves showed us, money that goes in the PlayStation Network, their storefront, half of that is all Fortnite, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, etc. You tell me we could have less of those? Okay, well, now I can't sign it, but now I really wish I could. So that's the biggest thing here is these are regulations that naturally publishers don't want placed on them. So they're going to do as much as they can to push back on it. And at this point, it seems like at least just based on the number of signatures, consumers do want something like this. And I think it's very important for it to definitely be discussed in front of lawmakers to see if it's something that needs to be figured out, because I think it needs to be, especially as we, again, get into the digital future, the digital age, where all the control lies with the publisher. You got to start putting up some guardrails then. Next up, let's talk about a Super Nintendo game, one that's being created with limited run games, and you have id and Bethesda in there, and even one of the original creators of Doom on the Super Nintendo, because we kind of need a new Super FX chip to make that thing run better, and that's something they mentioned last year with this announcement, and they said it was coming out in 2025. Still seems to be on track for that because there's some hands-on that was done with even gameplay being recorded by time extension. In fact, you can see some of the video here for it. And so what we had here was also an interview with Randy Linden, who they were part of the team that made Doom work on the Super Nintendo back in the day, which was a big deal. Even though the game then ran at 10 frames per second, I'm telling you, it was a big deal to see it just running on this hardware, the Super Nintendo. Well, now with this new, as they've dubbed it, Super FX3 chip, the game is running at twice the frame rate, somewhere in the 20 FPS, which I know it's not 60, but like again, Super Nintendo running this with the Super FX3 coprocessor is very impressive. And the fact they say the gameplay feels snappier, more responsive, and closer to the pace of that PC original. Now, Time Extension goes on to say this is only possible thanks to the development of what Linden is referring to as the unofficial Super FX3 chip, which in reality is a Raspberry Pi RP2350 built into the cartridge itself. It says, quote, running at 150 megahertz and able to emulate the Super FX chipset, this hardware allows the game to faithfully recreate the original look and feel of Doom SNES, but also offers improvements such as much faster frame rate. An ahead-of-time conversion program processes the actual Super FX instruction logic and transforms it into source code, which is then compiled as an executable for running on the high-speed processor. This is all obviously impressive stuff, but then take into account that this is limited run games, so you have a physical copy naturally, it's on the Super Nintendo, but it seems like they went above and beyond there too, because look at the PCB for this. This really caught my eye. It looks awesome. It looks all torn up and grungy and stuff, as you would expect for Doom. The only issue there clearly is it would be in a shell, like a casing, and you're not really gonna see it then. Although I guess if you put it in a clear, translucent case, like one of those, as they were showing, you'd be able to see it. I'm not a huge fan of those, though. Maybe a translucent red, although then you'd also still lose the effect. Maybe they just go with this because it looks cool. I think you could just go with a red PCB and it would still kind of get at least the point across for it being Doom, but still, I just think it's fun, it looks creative, and the game itself, now being doubled in frame rate with a Super FX3 chip, is awesome. So there you go, the Super Nintendo continues to see breakthroughs now in 2025. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Capcom, because they were asked by investors about Mega Man, which, Capcom is so strange. I know Mega Man isn't this massive sell. It's not Resident Evil, right? It's not Monster Hunter. But it is a legendary franchise that they completely control. So you feel like they'd want to do a lot more with it, except they kind of haven't. They've done their collections, but Mega Man 11 was quite a while ago now. It's almost 7 years. 7 years, 2018. Yeah, since that came out. And now, them being asked about it by investors, let's take a look. Let's see what they had to say. They went ahead and published this in like the Q&A with investors here. It caught my eye because yes, it's Mega Man. But they were simply asked, please tell me about your plans for the Mega Man series. Hey, shout out to that investor asking the real questions here. They answered back saying the Mega Man series is one of our most important IPs, and we are continuously considering ways to develop it further. However, we do not have any additional information we can share at this time. It's one of their most important IPs. Okay, well, it could be one of the most important IPs, but not the most lucrative. I guess that kind of lines up with clearly where their focus is right now. But they're like bringing back Onimusha. It's like, come on, do something with the Mega Man here. Like, I like the idea of them going back and doing some of these older franchises, like Onimusha. Seeing that come back is really cool. Seeing Okami 2 get revealed was awesome. And who knows, maybe there's an alternate timeline or future where we get another Beautiful Joe. But Mega Man has been a staple, core franchise for them since the original Nintendo. I mean, it's insane that we don't see more and more Mega Man games one way or the other, whether they're spin-offs or just straight up Mega Man platforming games like a Mega Man 12, which you feel like that would be next up, or even a Mega Man X game, or maybe they decide to get somewhat creative and go back to that Legends franchise. There's a lot of stuff they can do here, and after seeing the success of their Mega Man Battle Network collection that, sprinted to 1 million copies in no time flat, there does still seem to be interest in Mega Man. So I'd like to think Capcom has something planned and they've been working on in the background, but I feel like I've said that for years now, and they consistently have their Capcom Spotlight stuff, and they just never have anything to talk about with Mega Man. So, hey, again, here's hoping maybe next year. I mean, there's always next year, I guess. That's just kind of how it goes for Mega Man fans. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, are you picking up Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4? Well, 53% are just not interested at all, which, yeah, I could see that. I mean, again, it's going to most likely have 50% of people just not interested in that specific game. But there's 29% say maybe if there's a sale later, which, yeah, we've seen 1 and 2 go on sale multiple times now. I think that's been down to like $15 or something physically at different points. And 11% checking it out on Game Pass. Why not? It's going to be in there. And then 7% buying it ASAP. I did pick it up early because I wanted to do I wanted to check it out on the Switch too. And then also I'd be getting into Game Pass on the Xbox, so I'll have a couple different versions of it. But I'm excited to jump into this game and see how it runs on the Switch too, but also go back to, so when Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 came out, it was a big deal because it came out on like the PS2 was where I remember playing it for the first time at a friend's house. And it was crazy because it was 60 FPS. That was a big deal coming off of the PS1 or the Nintendo 64. It just looked so smooth and fluid. And that's where they introduced the revert when you came down for the vert. Like when you're doing vert, you could turn it then into street tricks. And they threw that into 1 and 2. But like that was a big deal at that time for 3. Again, the unfortunate part with 4 where they've kind of narrowed it down a bit and removed some of the open-endedness for it. But still, it's more Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I think the engine they've created here for 1 and 2 should be really, really cool with 3 and 4, and I'm looking forward to it. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Victor, who says, does anyone really want AI? It just feels like all these companies are just pushing it because it would be cheaper to develop it and replace workers with it. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. I don't really know a lot of people out there right now, like just regular people who are like, oh yeah, we gotta get AI figured out. We have to do AI. Full speed ahead. Most people are either concerned about it or just indifferent to it, or might think it's funny because ChatGPT can say some funny things. You can tell jokes or something. No one's thinking about the far future where you would have a sentient AI or you would have super intelligence and all of a sudden they can exponentially grow and solve all of the world's problems. And then like money disappears and like all these things, right? There's this utopian future. No one really thinks about that. So you're right in the sense that it would basically be a lot of the big tech companies telling you that you want it. But I think a lot of us just have a hard time visualizing exactly what AI would even be, say, in the far future. So we're just kind of in this limbo period where all we're seeing is that AI is causing a lot of jobs to be removed from the workplace already. And that's before the fear of AI in general outright replacing people, especially entry-level jobs in the big corporations. If you can have AI, whether it's ChatGPT or others, any of these other bots, help one person do the job of 5 or 6, there's a bunch of people who then won't be hired on, say, out of college, and then that turns into the whole thing. So yeah, basically it's a mess right now, and it's going to be disruptive either way. So hold on tight. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave that up here in a card. Or maybe you want to hear more about this weird, crazy Switch emulator situation that was going around and what exactly is happening there, I'll leave it right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great next couple of days. I'll be back Friday morning to close out the week with Newswave, and I'll see you then.